After the fall of Assad's government, Syrians flocked to the infamous prisons where the Assad regime is estimated to have held tens of thousands of detainees. Meanwhile, Blinken said that United States is working to bring home an American citizen, Travis Timmerman, who was freed from prison earlier in the week. The Syrian leadership said it was ready to cooperate with Washington to look for U.S. citizens disappeared under Assad, including on an ongoing search for U.S. journalist Austin Tice, who was abducted in 2012.
In terms of American citizen who was found just today, I can't give you any details on exactly what's going to happen, except to say that we're working to bring him home, to bring him out of Syria, and to bring him home. But for privacy reasons, I can't share any more detail than that.
Jordan also announced it will host a Syria crisis summit on Saturday that will include foreign ministers from numerous Western and Arab nations as well as Turkey. Bureau Report, DD India. Well, Russia has established a direct contact with the political committee of Syria's Islamist rebel group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov has said on Thursday. Bogdanov said Russia hoped to maintain its two bases in Syria, a naval base in Tartus and the Kamimim Air Base near the port city of Latakia to keep up efforts against international terrorism. The Russian diplomat added that Moscow has established contacts with the political committee of Syria's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group and discussed issues of ensuring the security of the Russian diplomatic mission and citizens in the country. Russia hoped the group would fulfill its pledges to guard against all excesses, maintain order, and ensure the safety of diplomats and other foreigners, he added. And with a view to establish order in newly liberated Syria, Jordan is going to organize a Syrian crisis summit over the weekend. The summit will have participation of foreign ministers from numerous Western and Arab nations, including Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Lebanon, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Qatar, Turkey, USA, the EU's foreign policy chief, and the UN envoy for Syria. Jordan Foreign Ministry announced on Thursday that the summit will take place on Saturday in Amman. The Saturday summit will discuss developments in Syria in the perspective of various groups fighting against each other to take control of certain areas after Syria's President Bashar al Assad fled the country by almost surrendering to the rebels supported by both USA and Turkey. And first of the 75 Indian nationals evacuated from Syria reached Delhi today. And this is not the first evacuation of its nationals by India. It has earlier also successfully executed multiple evacuation operations for its citizens in crisis zones from Yemen to Ukraine. These missions have showcased India's diplomatic agility and dedication to its citizens' safety abroad.
India has demonstrated a strong commitment to the safety and well being of its citizens abroad, particularly during times of geopolitical crises. Various operations in the past few years highlight the country's diplomatic agility and logistical capabilities in evacuating nationals from conflict zones. Let's look at some of the notable operations. 2011 Operation Homecoming. This operation evacuated 15,400 Indian nationals from Libya during its internal conflict. 2014 Kerala Nurses Rescue. The Indian government successfully brought back 46 nurses trapped in Iraq's Tikrit, ensuring their safe return from areas controlled by ISIS. 2015 Operation Rahat. Over 4,000 Indians and foreign nationals were evacuated from Yemen amid the civil war, facilitated by a call from Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the Saudi king. 2020 Operation Samudra Setu. During the COVID 19 pandemic, the Indian Navy rescued around 4,000 Indians stranded at sea, covering over 23,000 kilometers. 2020 to 2022 Operation Vande Bharat Mission. This was one of the largest civilian evacuation efforts, facilitating the return of nearly 2.97 crore Indians from abroad during the pandemic. 2021 Operation Devi Shakti. Following the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, India rescued 669 individuals, including Indian nationals and members of the Afghan Hindu and Sikh minority community. 2022 Operation Ganga. Over 22,500 Indians were evacuated from Ukraine amid the conflict with extensive airlift operations conducted. 2023 Operation Kaveri. In response to conflict in Sudan, this operation successfully evacuated over 3,000 Indians from various locations within the country. These operations reflect India's proactive stance in ensuring the safety of its citizens in crisis situations, showcasing the effective coordination between various government agencies and diplomatic channels. With Cowperson, Piyush, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for GD India from Delhi.
While voices to impeach South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol are growing stronger ahead of a parliamentary vote over Yoon's martial law, as the opposition leader Lee Jae-myung said the best way to restore order in the country is to impeach President Yoon. Yoon's decision to impose a military rule on December 3rd, even if rescinded within 6 hours, seems to have triggered a major crisis in South Korea. Lee called Yoon's remarks a declaration of war against the people and added that impeachment is the fastest and the most effective way to end the confusion. Yoon vowed to fight till the end, blaming the opposition party for paralyzing the government. He also claimed that a North Korean hack into the election commission made his party's crushing defeat in an April parliamentary election questionable. Yoon Yoon survived the first attempt to impeach him last Saturday when most of his ruling People Power Party boycotted the vote. And the United States announced a new $500 million package of military aid for Ukraine on Thursday as Washington races to bolster Kyiv before President elect Donald Trump takes office. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the United States is providing another significant package of urgently needed weapons and equipment to Ukraine from U.S. military stockpiles. The package, worth about $500 million, included ammunition for high mobility artillery rocket systems and high speed anti radiation missiles, among other assistance. The $5.6 billion in Presidential Drawdown Authority provides Biden with significant flexibility in directing additional military aid to Ukraine without needing congressional approval. While the White House reaffirmed that the U.S. would continue to provide additional packages for Ukraine right up to the end of Biden's administration.
That also today the president approved a new security assistance package for Ukraine that will provide them with additional air defense, artillery, drones, and armored vehicles. It's the 72nd such drawdown package announced by the United States, and as the president made clear, we're going to continue to provide additional packages right up to the end of this administration.
While NATO head Mark Rutte has warned the US led transatlantic alliance on Thursday that it was not ready for the threats it would face from Russia in the coming years and called for a shift to a wartime mindset with much higher defense spending. Rutte said NATO members had spent more than 3% of GDP on defense during the Cold War, and future spending would have to be much higher than the current alliance target of 2%.
We are not ready for what is coming our way in 4 to 5 years. Danger is moving towards us at full speed. We can prevent the next big war on NATO territory and preserve our way of life. This requires us all to be faster and fiercer. It is time to shift to a wartime mindset and turbocharge our defense production and defense spending.
Well, US President Joe Biden on Thursday released a long awaited strategy for countering anti Muslim and anti Arab hate, up sharply since the start of the Israel Gaza conflict, calling for urgent continued work to reduce discrimination and bias. The 64-page document comes weeks before the inauguration of former President Donald Trump, who imposed a travel ban on people from some majority Muslim countries during his first term that Biden rescinded on his first day in office. It mirrors a comprehensive strategy to fight anti Semitism released by the White House in September 2023 and comes more than a year after the death of 6-year-old boy Wadia al Fayom, stabbed by a man who targeted him and his mother because they were Palestinian American. In a foreword to the strategy, Biden called the attacks on the Chicago boy and his mother heinous acts and noted a spike in anti Muslim and anti Arab hate crimes, discrimination, and bullying that he called wrong and unacceptable. Biden also wrote that policies that result in discrimination against entire communities are wrong and fail to keep Americans safe. The Council on American Islamic Relations called the strategy too little, too late, while the Trump transition team had no immediate comment on the strategy or whether it would support it. And still to come, did India News App. Taiwan detects a Chinese military aircraft operating around the island. French president to name the new prime minister. And the Brazilian president is recovering from a second brain surgery.
We are going to be talking about India's pivotal comprehensive strategic partnership with a key country in the Indo-Pacific, Australia.
I think Australia has really benefited from India's shift towards multi-alignment.
I think India and Australia have a really strong ability to try and keep trade free and democratic values flowing in the Indian Ocean.
I think that our Indigenous culture in Australia, which is super important to recognise, has a lot of ties to Indian culture and philosophy.
Some of my best friends in Australia are Indian, and they have shown me the best side of humanity, I think.
Welcome back. You're watching the Indian News. I'm Pakshi Kurana. Moving on, shifting focus to Taiwan-China tensions now. Taiwan on Friday said that in the past 24 hours, it had detected 12 Chinese military aircraft operating around the island. According to the Defense Ministry, the Navy vessels, along with 34 Chinese aircraft, were spotted near Taiwan in the 24 hours. Beijing has been holding its biggest maritime drills in years, from near the southern islands of Japan to the South China Sea, Taiwan authorities said this week. Around 90 Chinese warships and Coast Guard vessels have been involved in the exercises that include stimulating attacks on foreign ships and practicing blockading sea routes. And meanwhile, China's defense ministry on Friday broke its silence about days of military activities around Taiwan, saying it was up to China to decide whether or not to hold drills, and the military would not be absent in fighting against the separatist forces.
It is the sacred duty of the People's Liberation Army to safeguard the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the state, to safeguard the fundamental interest of the Chinese people, and to safeguard the common interest of compatriots on both sides of Taiwan Strait. Just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions. Whether or not to hold exercises and when to hold them is a matter for us to decide on our own according to our own needs and the situation of the struggle.
While China has accused the Philippines of provoking trouble in the South China Sea with U.S. support, escalating tensions between the two nations. The accusation made on Friday by Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson Wu Quan comes after a week of heightened confrontations over disputed waters. Wu criticized the Philippines for stoking conflicts in the region, claiming that Manila, backed by Washington, is stirring unrest at multiple locations. He also emphasized that the Philippines' territorial claims, defined by international treaties, do not extend to China's Spratly Islands or Scarborough Shoal. This marks the latest in a series of clashes between Beijing and Manila over the South China Sea, increasing geopolitical tensions in the area. And in Bangladesh, a Chittagong court on Thursday recorded a petition moved by a senior Supreme Court lawyer for Chinmoy Krishnadas bail. However, the judge did not allow the early hearing. Chinmoy's lawyer, Rabindra Ghosh, expressed disappointment and said that he is considering moving the bail prayer to the High Court with the documents. On Wednesday, too, the court rejected the bail plea for the early bail hearing. The court dismissed the petition. Chinmoy Krishnadas, also a former priest of ISKCON, was arrested by police from Dhaka airport on November 25th on charges of sedition. On December 3rd, Chittagong court had fixed January 2nd for bail hearing as the prosecution submitted a time petition and there was no lawyer to represent Chinmoy. And moving on, outgoing US President Joe Biden has issued presidential pardons to 39 Americans convicted of nonviolent crimes and commuted the sentences of nearly 1,500 other people. The White House released a pardon list of 39 people that said the individuals had committed either a nonviolent offensive or a nonviolent drug offense. In 1,499 commuted sentences includes individuals who were placed in home confinement during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as those whose sentences Biden deemed to be too long due to outdated laws. The White House described it as the most act of presidential clemency issued in a single day. The moves come over a week after the president signed an unconditional pardon for his son, Hunter. Biden said the people he granted clemency would have received shorter sentences if charged under today's laws, policies, and practices. The president added that he will take more steps in the weeks ahead and that his administration will continue reviewing clemency petitions. While the United States welcomed the accord reached by Somalia and Ethiopia to end regional tensions sparked by Addis Ababa's push for maritime access, the two countries had been at loggerheads since landlocked Ethiopia struck a deal in January with Somalia's breakaway region of Somaliland to lease a stretch of coastline for a port and military base. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken added Washington was looking forward to the technical negotiations that would spell out Ethiopia's sea access while respecting Somalia's territorial integrity. And French President Emmanuel Macron has postponed the nomination of a new prime minister until Friday morning. 8 days after French MPs ousted Michel Barnier as prime minister in a no confidence vote, Macron cut short a visit to Poland on Thursday and had been expected to come up with a new name on his return. Macron said 2 days ago he wanted to name a new head of government within 48 hours. The new team is due to replace the one led by Michel Barnier, who resigned last week after far-right and leftist lawmakers voted to topple his government. Macron has vowed to remain in office until his second term ends in 2027, despite Barnier's downfall last week. And thousands of workers and supporters flooded the streets of Paris to protest against the growing number of redundancy plans and job losses affecting the French workforce. The demonstration, organized by prominent labor unions such as the General Confederation of Labor, Solidaires, and the FSU, comes in response to a worsening economic situation marked by significant layoffs, restructuring, and the dismantling of industrial sectors, marked by an upsurge in redundancy plans. The protesters are demanding urgent government action to protect jobs and support workers in industries facing decline. And pro-European Union protesters take to the streets for the 15th consecutive day in Tbilisi as Georgians rally against the newly elected Georgian government they consider illegitimate, protesting the government's decision to delay European Union membership talks amid a post-election crisis. The unrest in the region begins after Prime Minister's announcement on Thursday that Georgia would not seek accession talks with the EU until 2028 ignited a furious reaction from the opposition. Chaotic scenes unfolded for hours as police chased defiant protesters through the streets of central Tbilisi, beating them and making arrests. While Moldova's parliament voted early on Friday to impose a national state of emergency for 60 days, starting on December 16th, due to an unexpected cutoff of Russian gas supplies from the 1st of January. 56 members in the 101-seat chamber backed the measure in the vote just after midnight, following Prime Minister Doran Risen's call for approval. Declaring a state of emergency allows the government to respond rapidly and curb energy exports. Moldova receives Russian natural gas via Ukraine, which has said it will not extend its transit contract with Russian gas tight. And Brazil's president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, is recovering positively from his latest surgery on Thursday. Lula underwent a second procedure on Thursday following his emergency surgery earlier this week to relieve a bleeding in his skull. The president had an intracranial drain removed without complications and remains in ICU, doctors informed, adding he was lucid and speaking normally as he received family visits. President Lula will remain in intensive care and is expected to be discharged from Sao Paulo's Syrio-Lebanese hospital early next week when he might resume his presidential activities. And moving on, Venezuelan authorities said on Thursday that they have released 103 people this week who had been arrested amid anti-government protests following last July's contested presidential election. The detainees were accused of terrorism and taken to maximum security jails after a crackdown following the re-election of Maduro. The government announced that more than 300 people have been released from prison arrested in protest against the re-election of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Over 2,400 people were arrested during the unrest after the July 28th vote, which left at least 28 dead and nearly 200 injured. Maduro, who is to be sworn into office next month for a third six-year term, requested a review of the arrest facing following his re-election. Protests have largely petered out since September, when opposition leader González Urrutia went into exile in Spain after a warrant was issued for his arrest. Well, the first Sherpas and central bank's deputies meeting in South Africa, Johannesburg, made significant progress in shaping the G20 summit agenda, setting the tone for its leadership tenure. Governor of the South African Revenue Reserve Bank outlined South Africa's agenda to advance shared global goals through key priorities. As a report by Nazanin Ismail of TT India.
From Johannesburg, the first Sherpas and central bank's deputies meeting in South Africa made significant progress in shaping the G20 summit agenda, focusing on global priorities like economic recovery, financial stability, and sustainable development. Key outcomes included continued fiscal and monetary support to tackle inflation, supply chain disruptions, and employment challenges. Emphasis on strengthening financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank